everyone. It's great to have you all here at the CodeCrafts conference. Today we're going to talk about an inspiring way of developing software applications, becoming an AI toolsmith. With the advance in artificial intelligence, it is now possible to develop software applications in an iterative and productive way, making use of AI core technology. You will learn how a React developer tool can be crafted using AI libraries and how to create a usable, interactive product. I'm sure that if you are here, you want to be part of this innovative area. So let's get started and explore how to become an AI toolsmith. Speaking got a whole lot easier recently. Hi everyone, my name is Clemens Helm. I'm the co-founder of DevCraft Academy, where we train junior developers to become seniors in just 6 months instead of years. So one question up front to every one of you. Who of you doesn't use React every day? Okay, cool. So there's like 90% of the people here. So in order to give you some understanding of the code that we are going to look at afterwards, I'm going to give you a little React introduction. So basically React is a JavaScript library which lets you define frontends. And we are not only using JavaScript there, we're using JSX, which is an extension to JavaScript, where we can define HTML in JavaScript itself. Like you can see here, we've got a component. A component is just a function. And in the component, we can just return plain HTML. And what we still need to do is we need to mount the component to our HTML document, which we are doing with this React DOM render statement. And also here, we're using the JSX syntax. So to make this a bit more dynamic, one feature of React is that you can pass props to components. So in this case, we defined a name prop, which is just an argument, a named argument to a function. And we can specify this argument or this prop by defining it like an HTML attribute. And here we can just interpolate this CodeCrafts string into our HTML that we return. A special prop is the children prop, which lets us nest components. So in this case, I'm defining a second component, which is called highlight, and it accepts a children prop, which is specially named. And we just highlight the children by surrounding them with a strong tag. And when you look up here, we can pass this span with class red and the name interpolation to this highlight component. And this will just surround the span with the strong tag. But so far, that's not very exciting because we don't have any possibility to change things and interact with our components. So how this is done in React is by using state. And state is introduced by using the useState function. We can pass a default value to it. So in this case, we would say the name prop that we passed to the component is the initial state of our current name state variable. And there's also a setCurrentName function, which we can use to change the value of our state variable. So to see this in action, I'm going to copy this. I always love live coding at conferences. Let's see how this is working out. I've got a code pen open here, and I paste this in. You can see there's already the React DOM render statement, and we pass in the name CodeCrafts. I run this again, so it renders hello CodeCrafts, and I've got this input field where I'm setting the current name state variable as the value, so it's already pre-filled, as you can see. And on input, so when I change the text in the input field, it will call the setCurrentName function and pass it the value of the input field. So when I change the name here, you can see that it also changes the name in the title because the whole component gets re-rendered and the name is also updated in this headline. So far so good. Now that you're React professionals already. I still just need to figure out how to change the screen. Okay, now I'm back. Cool. Now it's time for some actual AI. That's what you're here for, right? And you've already seen my first AI screen that was generating the intro for my talk. And you might be wondering, what is this? Is this ChatGPT? And what are all these parameters at the right? So this isn't ChatGPT, but it's using the same engine. It's the OpenAI API playground. And it works similar to ChatGPT, just that it gives us more flexibility in regards to parameters. And what's a bit different here is that we've got this completion mode, where we start writing something, and then when we hit the submit button, it will keep writing and just complete what we actually want to generate. More exciting than generating text is generating code, so I've got something prepared for you. So I want to create a React component which greets the participants of the CodeCrafts conference. There should be a blue primary headline and a joke about AI developer tools in a paragraph, because you know AI jokes are always awesome. The conference name should be passed as a prop. So let's submit this and see what it does. So it's generating a greeter component that I've already introduced, and it's just auto-completing it. It gives me an H1 with color blue, and it writes, "Welcome to CodeCraft," and it interpolates the conference prop in here, and yeah, a very funny joke afterwards. So, is this impressive? Yes or no? Not so much, right? Why not? I mean, if I would have given this talk like 3 years ago, you would be jumping off your seats and think, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. My life as a developer might be over because this is going to take over the whole industry. But now you're like, not so impressive at all. Who of you has generated code like this before? Okay, so I would say most of the people here. And who of you is using this technique in your everyday work? Okay, so that would be like 10% or less. Why isn't this more popular?
The AI hallucinates.
Pardon?
The AI sometimes hallucinates. It makes up things that don't exist.
Okay, the AI hallucinates, yeah. But also, I mean, this is a fairly simple statement, right? I'm just writing, asking to generate a simple component with a blue primary headline. But I mean, things get more complicated in real projects. So I might want to add a border around my joke, or I want to add a shadow to it. And I would all have to specify this in natural language. So this gets pretty verbose pretty soon, right? And at least I would think, okay, if I write the code myself, I'm probably much faster. So we don't want to use the AI to write more than we would have written just in code. We want to do the opposite, right? We want a tool so we can specify our React component, for example, in a very concise way, so we have less work with the tool and still get expressive code. So I thought, what could I do? Let's try to generate a whole new language over React using just our AI by specifying some simple rules. And here's how I started. I'm telling the AI, in the following, I'll define the programming language ACT, because ACT is shorter than React, and acting is better than reacting. Please compile this language by converting it to a React component following these rules. First rule, the top level statement defines the component name like component, colon. All of its content is nested by 2 spaces, and content can also be nested within content, so we can nest components within components. Second rule, a statement, I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, but you can see what I mean. That's kind of the syntax you have in many templating languages where you don't want to write ID equals, class equals. You've got this shortcut language. And I want to teach this language to our ACT language as well. So this should get converted to a paragraph with the ID, my ID, which we specify here. And also the classes should be inserted into the, no, that's not a class. Should be inserted into the class attribute. And the text should be inserted into the child section of the tag, right? Third rule, styles provided in curly braces should be converted to, a real CSS style statement, how we write it in React usually. And most importantly, the joke component should render a paragraph with a joke about AI dev tools. So I've written some input in my new ACT language. I'm calling the component greeter, and it contains a div, which in turn contains an h1 with a main headline ID and some classes, then some text and a joke in green. Let's see what this does. So it's creating a greeter component. It got the div correctly, it got the h1 correctly, it got the ID correctly, even the classes. It inserted the text correctly, and it also rendered a green paragraph with another amazing, hilarious joke about AI development tools. But I mean, this is still fairly simple, right? It's static HTML, so it doesn't really stun us. Let's make this more interactive. Let's add another 2 rules. Rule number 5, a component should accept props as a list of comma-separated values. For example, we should call a component with parentheses and pass the props inside of these parentheses, pretty much like we call a function in many programming languages. And this should accept the prop A and B. And props can be passed to a component by invoking it like component A text B 42, for example. So in this case, I've got 2 components now. I've got a main component where I pass the conference name as a prop to the greeter. And in the main headline h1, I'm interpolating the conference name into the text. So let's see if this still works. I've got the headline, I've got the interpolation in there, I've got my paragraph with the joke, and I've got my main component, which passes the conference name as a prop to my greeter component. So far, this is looking pretty nice. I'm quite happy with it. But still, as we've also seen in the React intro, there's more. We want to make this more interactive, and for that, I'm gonna add some state to it. And of course, for that, I need more rules. So I've got rule number 7 and number 8. Rule number 7 is state can be defined as at my state equals ABC, which would get converted to this syntax that you've met before in the intro. So we've got the state variable and the set state variable, and these are assigned by using the use state hook, as we Reactors say. And we can also pass a default value to it. And an input can create a 2-way binding to state, like input, and then in square brackets, the state variable, which should be converted into also what we saw before, an input element which has the state variable as the value. And when we change the input field, we would like to call the set my state function, which should pass the value of the input field. So now I've got this new component here. As act input, I've got a state variable, which is called current conference name, and I pass it the conference name as the initial value. And I've got my headline, where I still interpolate the conference name. I've got the joke. And additionally, I'm adding an input, which creates a 2-way binding to this current conference name, and yeah, has some classes and styles attached to it. So let's see what this generates for us now. So we've got the greeter component. It's always exciting for me as well, because it works like 8 out of 10 times, but you never know. In this case, it looks like it worked, but we're going to check this right afterwards. So I've got this greeter component. It looks like it got the state correctly, right? So it's decomposing the conference name out of the props. It's using the conference name as a default or initial value for our state. And also here the interpolations look good. The choke is amazing again. And we've got our input section, which seems to be wired up correctly. So I'm going to give it a try and try to run it and see if it actually works. So we're going to replace our previous function here. And probably, I also know we need the main component. We don't need any props. I'm going to update this down here where it's inserted into the DOM. Let's see if it works. Oh, cool. So we've got our blue headline. We've got our hilarious joke. And we've got our input field, which updates the headline correctly. So I guess that's a little bit more impressive than our first code generation, right? No. Cool. So the question is, how do you go from here, right? How can you actually use this? And my idea was, hey, it would be so nice if OpenAI could just generate a compiler function for me, which I then could use in my code. And I tried to do that, so I have my step number 5 here. I rewrote the first sentence, and I told it in the following, I'll define the programming language ACT. Please write a JavaScript function which compiles this language by converting it to a React component following these rules. And the rules are still the same, so we don't have to look at them again. I just wrote the header of the function to tell it how it should be named and what parameters it should take. And now I submit it, and yeah, we're not going to look at all of this because it's going to take a while. I've got something prepared for you. So there's the code that it generated for me in a previous run. So what does it do there? It parses the top-level statement. It parses the text nodes. It parses the styles. It renders a joke about AI. It handles the props. It handles the state. It sets up the two-way bindings, and then it compiles it with some magical loop here. And I thought, wow, this is looking really great. It would be so awesome if this worked. And then I executed it, and I got this. So it really likes its own jokes, apparently. But it didn't really figure out how to compile my ACT component. That was quite disappointing, and I thought, okay, maybe if I retry it, and I did it like 25 times, and still it would have the same effect, that it wasn't able to figure out how to actually formalize what it already knows. I mean, it knows how to create a React component from my template, but somehow it doesn't know how to put it into code. So what do we learn from this? Or first, how can you still use it if you can't create a compiler function from it? Well, you could use it the same way that I did. You could use the playground, OpenAI API playground, because there, as you might have seen, you can generate or you can save some presets, like I did up here for the single steps. You could save some recipes for regular tasks that you have, and then just edit the code that you want to generate, and it would actually do that for you. Another possibility is, this is just a UI over an API, right? So you could also use it in your own tools, in your editor, or in a web platform, or a mobile app, and send this prompt up here to the OpenAI API, and you would get back as a response the actually generated code. So now it's about what we learned from it. First learning, AI, or at least generative AI, loves examples. So it's really easy to create a tool or even a language like this just by giving it a set of simple examples. We don't have to define a complex grammar with rules that don't have any exceptions or edge cases. We can just pass a few examples and it will figure out how actually we mean it to be built. Second learning, AI is a human too. So it seems that the AI has pretty much the same strengths and weaknesses that we have. For at least me as a developer, I wouldn't have a very hard time reading the rules and then translating the ACT code into React code. So I would probably be able to do that most of the time without making any mistake. However, I would have a much harder time coming up with the code for a compiler which converts ACT to React. So we're quite similar here. And most important learning, your job is safe. The AI can't do much better than you do. It can do it faster, but probably you can do it better, at least if you practice a little bit. But I would say for now, because who knows what happens in a year or two. With this depressing statement, I would say thank you for listening to me. If you want to stay in contact with me, please scan this QR code. It leads to my LinkedIn profile, and then we can even stay in touch after the conference. Thanks a lot.